Daniel was more than just a prophet. He was an orchestrator of divine timing. The very moment he drew his last breath, a monumental countdown commenced. This was the man who miraculously emerged unscathed from the lion's den, whose interpretations of dreams struck fear into the hearts of powerful kings, and whose profound visions reached far beyond his own era, deep into the distant future. When Daniel finally closed his eyes for the last time, heaven did not fall silent. On the contrary, something incredibly potent and significant began the very instant his earthly voice was stilled. What if I told you that the most astonishing prophecies recorded in the Bible didn't culminate with Daniel's final vision, but rather truly began their unfolding only after he had been laid to rest? From the dramatic fall of Babylon to the redemptive arrival of the Messiah, from the miraculous return to Jerusalem to the complex events shaping our world even today, Daniel foresaw it all. He didn't merely witness the sweep of history. He peered directly into our present moment. Yet, a profound mystery continues to captivate and astound both devoted believers and seasoned Bible scholars alike. In Daniel 12 verse 4, God himself instructed him, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end." Why was such a crucial message to be sealed away? What profound truths were meant to remain concealed? And, perhaps most significantly, are we the generation destined to finally comprehend its full meaning? Later in this presentation, we will delve into a specific prophecy given by Daniel that may illuminate the widespread confusion, palpable chaos, and relentless rapid change we observe sweeping across the world today. So, please stay with us, because Daniel's extraordinary story did not conclude with his death. It is, in fact, what transpired after he died that fundamentally altered everything. Daniel bore witness to, and indeed lived through, the dramatic rise and precipitous fall of mighty empires. From the opulent, golden days of Babylon to the burgeoning, formidable power of Persia, he steadfastly maintained his unwavering faithfulness. He served first as a young, exiled captive, and later ascended to the esteemed position of a wise and trusted advisor to a succession of kings. He was universally respected for his unimpeachable honesty, his unwavering courage, and his profoundly intimate connection with God. Yet, when his appointed time finally arrived, Daniel departed this world quietly, without fanfare. There were no adoring crowds, no grand farewell speeches. Simply a faithful servant completing his earthly mission. But heaven, most assuredly, did not forget him. Daniel's death was not merely the cessation of a single life. It signified the definitive close of an entire era and the profound commencement of a divine countdown that reverberates powerfully through history even to this day. In his very last vision, Daniel found himself standing, trembling with awe, before a celestial angel. What he beheld profoundly shook him to his core. A coming time of unprecedented global trouble, a glorious final resurrection, and a solemn last judgment. And then, the angel imparted a truly enigmatic command. Daniel 12 verse 4 states explicitly, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end." Seal it. Why would the Almighty choose to conceal a message from the very prophet he had selected to receive and record it? What profound truth was deemed too overwhelming, too complex, or perhaps simply not yet ready for Daniel's contemporary generation to grasp? What message was specifically intended for future generations, perhaps even for us, living in these tumultuous times? The book was indeed sealed, but critically, it was not meant to remain so eternally. Many earnest believers today hold that we are now, in our present era, beginning to witness its profound unveiling. They suggest that the strange, intricate symbols and enigmatic timelines that Daniel himself could not fully comprehend are now, remarkably, beginning to coalesce into clear meaning within the daily headlines, amidst unfolding world events, and even in the commonplace occurrences shaping our lives every single day. Daniel himself did not live long enough to witness the ultimate fulfillment of his incredible visions. Yet, The final breath he drew carried with it something enduring, something eternal, a profound message destined to journey far beyond the geographical boundaries of Babylon or Persia, echoing all the way to the uttermost end of time itself. Long before the joyous return home was conceivable, long before any rebuilding efforts could commence, and even before the faintest glimmer of hope seemed possible, Daniel held fast to his faith. He was just a young man when he was forcibly taken from Jerusalem. His beloved city lay in ruins. The sacred temple had been consumed by flames, and his people were tragically scattered across foreign lands. But while despair led many others to give up, Daniel clung tenaciously to a singular, divine promise, a word spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, that after 70 long years of agonizing exile, God would, without fail, bring his people back home. As the decades slowly passed, Daniel never forgot that crucial prophecy. Nearing the very end of his remarkable life, he meticulously unrolled Jeremiah's ancient scroll and, with dawning realization, understood that the appointed time was almost at hand. So, he did what had always been his deepest inclination and strength. He prayed. Not merely a perfunctory, quick petition, but a heartfelt, sustained outpouring of his very soul. Daniel confessed the collective sins of his people with deep contrition and fervently implored God to extend his profound mercy. That powerful, intercessory prayer is meticulously recorded for us in Daniel chapter 9. It was not laden with presumptuous demands. Instead, it resonated with an exemplary and profound humility. And even as Daniel poured out his heart in fervent prayer, God was already, in his sovereign timing, actively at work. In 538 BC, an astonishing event unfolded. King Cyrus of Persia, a powerful monarch who did not even worship the God of Israel, issued a truly shocking and unprecedented announcement. He declared that the God of heaven had personally instructed him to oversee the rebuilding of his sacred temple in Jerusalem. And with that, he issued a royal decree. Any Jew who desired to return to their homeland was granted full permission to do so. Ezra 1 verses 2-3 records his profound words. The Lord God of heaven has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem. Whoever among you belongs to his people, let him go up. It was nothing short of a miracle. There was no need for war, no rebellion, just a sovereign royal decree that precisely fulfilled the very promises Daniel had so faithfully believed and fervently prayed for. But the wonder didn't end there. The prophet Isaiah had explicitly named Cyrus by name almost 150 years before his birth. And now, Daniel's own generation was witnessing that ancient, divine promise unfold before their very eyes. Entire families, filled with a mixture of trepidation and soaring hope, meticulously packed their belongings and prepared for an arduous journey back to a land they had never personally seen, a land known to them only through cherished stories passed down by their grandparents. While Daniel himself did not live to physically witness the glorious return, his prophetic words had meticulously prepared the way, laying the spiritual groundwork. His fervent prayers had been instrumental in breathing life into that divine promise. And that pivotal moment marked merely the initial step in a profound chain of interconnected prophecies that were only just beginning their magnificent unfolding. The long and arduous journey back to Jerusalem was undeniably filled with an almost palpable sense of hope. The exiles returned, their hearts brimming with dreams of restoration and an unshakable faith in God's steadfast promise. But upon their arrival, the sight that greeted them was utterly heartbreaking. Jerusalem was not the vibrant city they had envisioned. It was a desolate ruin. The magnificent temple, once a vibrant epicenter of worship and divine glory, now stood as a sorrowful pile of ashes and shattered stones. But these resilient people had not returned merely to mourn. They had come to rebuild, to resurrect their sacred home. Led by the determined Zerubbabel and vigorously encouraged by the stirring words of the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, the people courageously commenced the monumental task. They tirelessly cleared away the overwhelming rubble. They carefully laid a sturdy new foundation, And once again, heartfelt prayers began to ascend from the very ground where God's holy name had previously been so reverently worshipped. The undertaking was anything but easy. Many of the older individuals, those who remembered the former splendor, wept openly when they saw the new temple slowly beginning to take shape. It bore no resemblance to the awe-inspiring magnificence of Solomon's original temple. There were no walls covered in shimmering gold, no sacred Ark of the Covenant, no visible manifestation of divine glory. Only simple, unadorned stones and the weary, determined hands of the builders. Haggai chapter 2:3 poignantly captures the profound bittersweetness of that moment. Who is left among you who saw this house in its former glory? And how do you see it now? Is it not as nothing in your eyes? But God, in his unwavering faithfulness, had certainly not forgotten his promise. If Daniel had proven so incredibly accurate concerning these intricate details, then the entirety of his remaining visions might also prove to be literally true, destined to unfold precisely when the divine time was right. However, from within one of these four fractured kingdoms, a king utterly unlike any other would soon emerge. A man whose unprecedented cruelty would rigorously test the faith and endurance of God's people as never before. Daniel, with his prophetic insight, had also clearly foreseen his arrival. This future monarch arrogantly bestowed upon himself the title Epiphanes, presumptuously meaning God made manifest or illustrious. But to the suffering Jewish people, he embodied nothing remotely close to the divine. Antiochus IV ascended to power, leveraging the fragmented remnants of Alexander's once grand empire. And from the very outset of his reign, his actions starkly revealed the true, malevolent nature of his heart. He was not merely driven by an insatiable hunger for political control. He harbored a fanatical desire to utterly eradicate everything that defined the people of Israel, their sacred faith, their cherished worship, and their very identity as a distinct nation. Initially, he subtly began to meddle in the internal affairs of the temple, strategically appointing corrupt priests who would prioritize obedience to him over loyalty to God. But the situation soon escalated, swiftly becoming far more egregious. After enduring a humiliating defeat in Egypt, Antiochus, in a fit of unrestrained rage, unleashed his fury upon Jerusalem. He violently entered the city, unleashing bloodshed upon its streets as innocent people were senselessly killed. The sacred temple was forcibly seized. And then, in an act that utterly shocked the faithful to their very core, Antiochus brazenly constructed an altar to the pagan Greek god Zeus directly inside the holy temple of the Lord. He then proceeded to commit the utterly unthinkable. He sacrificed pigs upon that very altar, an act explicitly and strictly forbidden by God's divine law. This was far more than a mere religious offense. It was a heinous, direct assault upon God himself. Daniel, with chilling precision, had foreseen this very moment hundreds of years prior. In chapter 8:23-24, he had spoken of a king with a fierce face, skilled in dark schemes, who would rise in the latter days of their kingdom and would destroy the holy people. Every single word of that prophecy proved tragically true. Antiochus ruthlessly outlawed the observance of the Sabbath. He banned circumcision, the sign of the covenant. He made it a capital offense to own or even read the sacred scriptures. Anyone who dared to disobey faced unspeakable torture or immediate execution. Mothers were forced to witness the brutal murder of their own children. Elders were given an unthinkable choice: consume unclean, forbidden food, or face death. It was a harrowing, seemingly interminable period of profound darkness. But even amidst that suffocating darkness, the faithful people clung steadfastly to Daniel's prophetic words. In chapter 12:2, Daniel had written that many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. That profound hope ignited an indomitable courage within a small, defiant group who steadfastly refused to capitulate. From the rugged hills of Judea, the family of a revered priest named Mattathias bravely began to fight back. They were not seeking mere revenge. They were fighting with zealous determination to keep God's sacred covenant alive. Daniel had already prophesied about this very rebuilding in chapter 9:25, explicitly writing that the restoration would occur in times of trouble. And that is precisely what transpired. Hostile enemies from neighboring lands employed every conceivable tactic to impede the work. They openly mocked the diligent builders. They dispatched slanderous letters to the king of Persia, baselessly accusing the Jews of rebellious intentions. For years, the vital project languished and stalled. But then, God once again stirred their hearts, speaking powerfully through the prophet Haggai. Is it time for you yourselves to live in your paneled houses, while this house lies in ruins? The people were deeply convicted by this divine rebuke and renewed their commitment to the work. Finally, after a grueling 21 years, the temple was completed. It may not have shimmered with the resplendent glory of its predecessor, but it stood tall and resolute. A physical testament built not just with stone and mortar, but upon the solid foundation of ancient prophecy. What those weary builders could not have possibly known, however, was this profound truth. This very second temple would, one glorious day, be graced by the personal presence of the Messiah himself. Daniel had not simply foreseen the rise of a physical structure. He had seen God's intricate, overarching plan meticulously unfolding, one significant stone at a time. As life within the walls of Jerusalem slowly, painstakingly, began to return to a semblance of normalcy, something far more monumental was simultaneously unfolding far beyond its borders. The mighty Persian Empire, with its vast dominion and formidable military, appeared utterly unshakable, ruling the known world with an iron fist of strength and an intricate system of order. Yet, Daniel had already peered through the veil of time and clearly seen what momentous events were destined to come next. Indeed, back in Daniel chapter 8, he had vividly described a truly strange and compelling vision. He saw a powerful ram, distinguished by its two horns, charging furiously across the earth, crushing everything that dared to stand in its path. But then, from the west, an astonishing goat suddenly appeared, moving with such astonishing speed that its feet seemed barely to touch the ground. This swift goat struck the mighty ram with incredible, devastating force, shattering its horns and violently casting it down. Later, a celestial angel revealed the profound meaning of this enigmatic vision. The ram represented Media and Persia, the formidable dual-kingdom empire. The goat symbolized Greece, and the prominent, large-horn position between its eyes referred to Greece's first, immensely powerful king. That profound vision remained sealed and largely incomprehensible for over 2 centuries, until a brilliant young military genius named Alexander the Great emerged from Macedonia. In his early 20s, he led his formidable army from west to east, relentlessly conquering city after city with unparalleled speed and tactical brilliance. In 334 BC, he launched his epic campaign. Just 3 years later, in 331 BC, he confronted the formidable Persian king Darius III at the pivotal battle of Gaugamela. Despite the Persian army's colossal size, Alexander utterly crushed it, bringing about the swift and decisive fall of the mighty Persian Empire. And suddenly, Daniel's ancient vision was no longer an enigmatic mystery. It had dramatically transformed into undeniable, unfolding world history. The swift goat had moved with such incredible velocity that its feet seemed not to touch the ground, precisely mirroring the breathtaking speed and unstoppable momentum of Alexander's conquests. And the mighty ram, once so powerful and seemingly invulnerable, was utterly broken. How could Daniel possibly have possessed such precise foreknowledge, predicting these specific events centuries in advance? This was unequivocally not a matter of mere chance or astute guesswork. It was a direct, divine revelation. In a remarkable testament to its accuracy, Jewish scholars living under nascent Greek rule reportedly presented Alexander's generals with the ancient scroll of Daniel. These hardened military leaders were reportedly stunned into silence, beholding with their own eyes how clearly their own burgeoning story had been meticulously written down long before they were even born. This was far more than a generalized prediction of empires simply rising and falling. Daniel had precisely described who would rise, how they would conquer, and even what would transpire next. And indeed, that crucial next part was still to come, for Daniel's prophetic insights did not cease with the dramatic fall of Persia. His comprehensive vision also revealed the momentous events that would unfold following Alexander's sudden and unexpected death. The spectacular rise of Greece, it turned out, was not the conclusion of this epic prophecy. It was merely the intricate, pivotal middle. The subsequent phase of Daniel's astonishing vision would usher in not merely profound political upheavals, but also a searing spiritual crisis that would once again profoundly shake the very foundations of Jerusalem. Alexander the Great, with his youthful brilliance and fearless determination, had seemed utterly unstoppable, conquering more territory than anyone could have ever conceived. But then, with shocking abruptness, his reign came to an end. At the tender age of just 32, Alexander died unexpectedly in Babylon. No one had anticipated it. No one was truly prepared for such a sudden void. He left behind one of the largest and most rapidly assembled empires in all of history, yet with no clear heir designated to assume his mantle of power. What immediately followed was absolute chaos and brutal power struggles. His most trusted generals, once united under Alexander's singular leadership, now ruthlessly turned against one another. Destructive wars erupted, fragile alliances shifted constantly, and eventually, the vast empire was violently carved into four distinct major parts. Daniel, incredibly, had foreseen all of this long before it transpired. In Daniel 8 verse 8, the prophet explicitly wrote, "When the large horn was broken, for notable horns came up toward the four winds of heaven." That is precisely what occurred. Alexander, the large horn, was broken at the very zenith of his power, and in his stead, four of his ambitious generals seized control. Cassander assumed rule over Macedonia and Greece in the west. Lysimachus took control of Thrace and parts of Asia Minor to the north. Seleucus gained Syria and Babylon in the east. And Ptolemy reigned over Egypt and Palestine to the south. Four distinct rulers, governing in four cardinal directions, precisely as Daniel had foretold centuries prior. For the Jewish people, strategically situated in the very heart of this vast, tumultuous empire, these were not merely complex political machinations. This was the undeniable unfolding of prophecy. The very same Daniel who had served faithfully under the Babylonian and Persian empires had now, with astonishing precision, accurately described the spectacular rise of Greece and its subsequent, dramatic division. In Jerusalem, scribes and revered elders began poring over Daniel's ancient scrolls with a profound, newfound urgency and insight. They recognized that this was not merely evocative symbolic poetry. This was tangible history meticulously written in advance. And that realization carried immense implications. Daniel's vision, therefore, was far more than a mere prophetic warning. It transformed into a crucial lifeline, a burning fire ignited in the hearts of those who still possessed an unyielding belief that God's sacred promises would never, ever fail, even when confronted by the grim specter of death itself. Victory, however, did not come easily. The arduous and brutal fight against Antiochus had exacted a devastating toll, costing countless lives, tearing apart numerous families, and inflicting years of unimaginable suffering. But finally, the Maccabees, those steadfast, faithful warriors who had resolutely refused to allow their worship to be silenced, triumphantly reclaimed Jerusalem. They stood once again upon the sacred mountain, gazing upon the hallowed place where God's holy name had once dwelled. What they beheld was utterly heartbreaking. The temple lay in utter ruin. Stones were blackened and scarred with the residue of smoke. Abominable pagan idols still stood defiantly. The sacred altar was grotesquely stained with the blood of sacrificed pigs. A heavy, mournful silence now filled the air where once joyful choirs had sung praises. But they did not surrender to despair. With renewed resolve, they immediately set to work. They meticulously cleansed the temple from top to bottom, tearing down every single object and structure that had been defiled. They diligently rebuilt the altar. With great anticipation, they prepared to bring spiritual light back into the hallowed house of God. And then came the pivotal moment, the relighting of the golden lampstand, the menorah. However, they discovered only one small jar of pure, consecrated oil, enough, by all estimations, for a single day's burn. Undeterred, they lit it anyway. And what transpired next became a miraculous event, lovingly remembered for generations. The flame continued to burn, not for just one day, but for 8, precisely enough time to prepare and consecrate more holy oil. Daniel, remarkably, had foreseen this very moment long before its occurrence. In chapter 8:14, the angel had explicitly told him, "It will take 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be cleansed." And now it was. From that miraculous moment, the enduring celebration of Hanukkah was born, not merely a festival of lights, but a powerful, living testimony that God unfailingly keeps his divine word. In the crucible of profound fear, unyielding faith had triumphed. Amidst pervasive darkness, the light had miraculously returned. And as the flame once again burned brightly within the temple, Daniel's comprehensive vision continued its inexorable unfolding. For another colossal empire was already ascended, one far stronger, colder, and more formidable than anything the world had ever witnessed. It did not rise with the idealistic dreams of philosophers or the eloquent poetry of bards. It rose with the unyielding might of iron. Rome did not expand its dominion through charm or inspiration, as previous kingdoms might have. It simply crushed. It conquered. Its legions of soldiers marched with chilling, relentless discipline. Its leaders ruled with absolute, unyielding power. Its intricate laws extended into every conceivable corner of life. Wherever Rome extended its reach, it did not merely seize land. It seized absolute, unyielding control. And once again, Daniel had long before gazed into the future and perfectly foreseen this empire's arrival. In chapter 2, verse 40, he described a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And in chapter 7:7, he beheld a terrifying beast, unlike anything he had ever seen, possessing monstrous iron teeth that devoured and trampled down whatever was left. This was fundamentally different from the empires of Babylon, Persia, or Greece. It possessed no inherent beauty, no artistic elegance, only raw, brutal strength, pervasive fear, and absolute, suffocating control. And inevitably, Rome's inexorable reach extended all the way to Jerusalem. In 63 BC, the formidable Roman general Pompey triumphantly entered the holy city. The Jewish people, with a profound sense of loss, effectively forfeited their independence. Rome systematically took over. Its appointed officials now ruled with absolute authority. Its burdensome taxes mercilessly drained the people of their resources. Rome's pervasive presence was everywhere, on the crowded streets, within the sacred temple courts, and even deeply unsettling the hearts of the people, who increasingly questioned if God had truly abandoned them. Herod, the infamous puppet king, embarked on a grand rebuilding of the temple, not, however, out of genuine reverence for God, but primarily to impress his Roman overlords. It certainly looked magnificent and grand, but a vital spiritual essence was undeniably missing. The people continued to feel the crushing weight of relentless oppression. In response, they began to study the sacred scriptures with an even greater intensity and discernment. And the more they delved into the prophecies of Daniel, the more acutely they realized that they were, in fact, living precisely within the very days and unfolding events he had so meticulously described. But Daniel had not merely seen the rise and dominion of a fearsome earthly empire. He had seen something infinitely greater, something profoundly hopeful, concealed within its very fabric. In the midst of this terrifying beast-like kingdom, he beheld a glorious vision of hope, a Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven, who would be given authority, glory, and sovereign power. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom one that will never be destroyed. It was a radiant glimpse of something eternal, a kingdom that the brutal empire of iron could never possibly crush or extinguish. That momentous era was now drawing ever closer. Rome was not the ultimate end of God's plan. It was merely the grand stage upon which the next crucial prophecy Daniel had penned, the one concerning the glorious coming of the Messiah, was about to dramatically take shape, right within the heart of this cold and brutal kingdom. In his advanced years, Daniel was granted one of the most intricately detailed and truly astonishing revelations found anywhere in all of Scripture. While deeply engaged in prayer concerning the destiny of his people, the angel Gabriel appeared to him with a profound message, one that included a precise divine timeline. This timeline pertained not merely to the rebuilding of Jerusalem, but, far more significantly, to the imminent coming of the Anointed One, the Messiah. Daniel 9 verse 24 speaks of it with striking clarity. 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city. Crucially, these were not literal calendar weeks, but rather symbolic of years, 70 sets of 7 years each, totaling 490 years. And Gabriel further clarified that from the moment a definitive command was issued to rebuild Jerusalem, there would be 69 of these weeks, amounting to 483 years, until the arrival of the Messiah himself. And then, precisely as foretold, it happened. Right on schedule, a child was born in the small Judean town of Bethlehem. He grew up in the humble village of Nazareth. And when the divinely appointed time arrived, he stepped into human history, not as a powerful political leader or a conquering general, but as a profound teacher, a compassionate healer, and ultimately, the promised Savior. He spoke with inherent, undeniable authority. He miraculously calmed raging storms. He graciously forgave sins. He even raised the dead. And significantly, he often referred to himself by a title that sounded peculiar to many, but resonated deeply and familiarly with those who were acquainted with Daniel's ancient writings, the Son of Man. Daniel had indeed seen that very title in chapter 7:13, describing a majestic, divine figure coming with the clouds of heaven, who would be given everlasting dominion. Jesus was not simply quoting an ancient prophet. He was unequivocally identifying himself as the very person Daniel had glimpsed in his awe-inspiring vision. But then arrived the moment that profoundly shocked even his most devoted followers. Daniel had also chillingly written in chapter 9:26, "After the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself." And that is precisely what transpired. Jesus was arrested, brutally beaten, and ultimately crucified, not for any sin of his own, but as a substitutionary sacrifice for our sins. As he agonizingly hung on the cross, to human eyes it appeared to be a catastrophic failure. Yet, it was, in reality, the precise fulfillment of prophecy, accurate down to the very year. The temple veil was miraculously torn from top to bottom. The earth convulsed and shook. And in that moment, everything Daniel had seen centuries before suddenly became profoundly clear. The Son of Man had not come to physically destroy Rome, but to decisively defeat something infinitely more profound and destructive, sin and death themselves. The prophecy that had remained sealed for such an immense span of time was now, dramatically, thrown wide open. And those who possessed spiritual ears to hear began to grasp its profound truth. This was not merely the unfolding of human history. This was the very essence of heaven intimately touching earth. But Daniel's extensive vision did not conclude at that triumphant point. Another significant part was still awaiting its dramatic fulfillment, a part that would arrive with fire, with devastating judgment, and with the tragic fall of the very city that had, lamentably, rejected the one sent to save it. It did not take long after the pivotal death and resurrection of Jesus for these solemn warnings to become terrifyingly real. Daniel had written about this very event centuries prior. In chapter 9:26, he spoke of the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Jesus himself echoed this warning with urgent emphasis. Standing near the magnificent temple, he looked at his disciples and instructed them. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. The ominous signs were now omnipresent. Rome grew increasingly restless and intolerant of rebellious Judea. The Jewish people themselves were tragically divided. Some still fervently awaited a political Messiah to liberate them, while others quietly followed Jesus in secret. Tensions inexorably escalated into widespread uprisings, which then ignited into a full-scale war. In the fateful year 70 AD, Roman legions inexorably surrounded Jerusalem. The ensuing siege was relentlessly brutal. Famine and virulent disease swept mercilessly through the trapped city. Families were cornered, without escape. Hope, for many, utterly evaporated. And finally, the Romans broke through its defenses. They set the sacred temple ablaze. Its once golden walls melted under the intense heat. The holy place was systematically torn apart, stone by agonizing stone, precisely as Jesus himself had prophesied it would be. Over 1 million Jews perished in the catastrophic conflict. Those who miraculously survived were either enslaved or scattered across the vast Roman Empire. The once proud city of David tragically became a sprawling graveyard. The magnificent temple, once the sacred epicenter of God's tangible presence, was utterly and irrevocably gone. This devastating event was far more than a mere national tragedy. It was the chilling, precise fulfillment of everything Daniel had seen and prophesied. The people of the covenant, who had once been exiled to Babylon, were now scattered to the far ends of the earth. This catastrophic dispersion marked the definitive beginning of the diaspora, a global scattering that would, remarkably, endure for nearly 2 millennia. But even amidst the desolate ashes and utter ruin, God was unequivocally not finished. For Daniel's comprehensive vision did not culminate in mere destruction. Instead, it concluded with a majestic stone, cut out by no human hand, striking the transient empires of men and growing into an immense mountain that would ultimately fill and cover the entire earth. And even as the dust of destruction slowly settled over Jerusalem, that prophetic stone was already, quietly, yet powerfully, rising. Rome may have believed the story was definitively over. The temple was gone. The city lay in ruins. The leader of this peculiar movement had been crucified, his followers scattered to the winds. From all appearances, nothing remained. Yet, prophecy spoke a different truth. Daniel, centuries earlier, had envisioned something entirely contrary to this apparent defeat. In chapters 234 and 35 of his book, he saw a stone, cut out not by human hands, striking down earthly empires and growing into an immense mountain, a kingdom that would stand eternally, never to be destroyed. That stone, it turns out, was already in motion. Following the resurrection of Jesus, his followers, far from vanishing, grew stronger and more resolute. Humble fishermen transformed into powerful preachers, and the uneducated spoke with profound wisdom. Persecuted believers, rather than being silenced, refused to yield. Every attempt by Rome to crush this nascent movement seemed only to propel its message further. The gospel traversed cities, crossed borders, and transcended languages, not by the force of swords, but through transformed lives, through unwavering compassion, through sacrificial love, and through steadfast faith. Martyrs bravely sang hymns in their prisons, churches gathered in secret, and everywhere, hearts were undeniably changing. By the 4th century, a truly astonishing event unfolded. The very empire that had orchestrated Jesus' crucifixion and relentlessly persecuted his followers, Rome itself, bowed. Emperor Constantine embraced Christianity, marking a pivotal shift. The cross, once a gruesome symbol of death and shame, was elevated to become a triumphant emblem of victory. Daniel's vision had, remarkably, come to life. The stone had indeed become a mountain, and it was now filling the earth. However, this was only the beginning. While Daniel's powerful visions clearly resonated with his own era and the centuries that followed, some of his final pronouncements were sealed, awaiting a future generation to comprehend them. He spoke of a time when people would run to and fro, when knowledge would explode, a description that sounds remarkably like the interconnected, rapidly evolving world we inhabit today. Even long after Daniel's passing, his words continued to reverberate through time. Early Christians studied his visions with profound awe. They recognized Rome as the formidable fourth beast of his prophecy and embraced Jesus as the Son of Man. They understood that the stone Daniel saw, representing God's eternal kingdom, was already actively spreading throughout the world. As time marched on, new generations faced new challenges, yet Daniel's prophecies continued to stir hearts and minds. During the Middle Ages, dedicated monks and scholars painstakingly copied his ancient scrolls by candlelight. Some genuinely believed they were already living in the last days, while others viewed Daniel's intricate timelines as complex puzzles waiting to be unraveled. Kings and commoners alike turned to his words for solace and guidance in times of war, famine, and pervasive fear. The Reformation era brought a fresh perspective. Leaders such as Martin Luther and others returned to Daniel's visions with bold, discerning eyes. They believed Daniel had issued clear warnings about religious corruption and the dangers of false authority. His unwavering words instilled in them the courage to champion truth, often at the ultimate cost of their lives. Throughout these sweeping epics, one particular verse kept resonating with increasing intensity. Daniel 12 verse 4. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. For centuries, people pondered its meaning, asking, was it symbolic? Was it purely spiritual? Or was it a literal prediction of the distant future? Then, the modern age dawned. Suddenly, people could traverse the globe in mere hours. Information became instantaneously accessible to anyone with a connection. Technology exploded, and measurable, tangible knowledge began accumulating at an unprecedented, dizzying pace. Daniel's ancient words no longer felt distant or abstract. They felt profoundly current and undeniably relevant. Each successive generation has approached Daniel's book with a sense of wonder and inquiry. But what if our generation is the one destined to finally understand what was sealed away? After all, some critical parts of his vision were intentionally kept hidden until the time of the end. For centuries, people read Daniel's visions and mused, how could these things ever possibly come to pass? Yet today, many of those very prophecies no longer sound impossible. They sound strikingly familiar. In Daniel 12 verse 4, the angel specifically instructed him, seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. That time, many now believe, might very well be upon us. Today, individuals fly across continents in a matter of hours. Satellites ceaselessly orbit our Earth, and the internet intricately connects billions of people across vast distances. Artificial intelligence grows smarter by the day, pushing the boundaries of what we thought possible. Technology isn't just advancing, it's accelerating faster than our collective ability to keep pace. Knowledge hasn't merely increased, it's exploding with exponential force. But there is another sign, perhaps even more compelling and harder to disregard. In 1948, after nearly 2,000 years of global exile, the Jewish people miraculously returned to their ancient homeland. Israel was reborn as a sovereign nation, just as Daniel had subtly hinted and as other prophets had explicitly promised. Then, in 1967, they recaptured Jerusalem, the very city Daniel had wept over, the spiritual heart of his profound visions. For the first time in modern history, the prophetic pieces seemed to be dramatically falling into place. Jerusalem, the revered Temple Mount, and the covenant people restored to their ancestral land. None of these occurrences seem accidental. Daniel's prophecies were not confined to Babylon, Persia, or Rome alone. His extraordinary visions stretched across vast expanses of time, reaching directly into our own era, a world currently filled with persistent unrest, escalating global tensions, and widespread moral confusion. It's a world where the very foundations of society often feel like they are shaking. Could it be that the scrolls Daniel was commanded to seal away are now, at long last, being opened? For if his words prove true about kingdoms long vanished into history, then perhaps they also speak profound truths about what still lies ahead. And if we truly are living in this unique time of unprecedented knowledge and rapid global movement, then the final, momentous chapter of Daniel's prophecy may not be far off at all. Daniel didn't merely foresee the future. He revealed to us that God is ultimately in sovereign control of it all. Through every empire's rise and fall, every fierce battle, every moment of profound silence or agonizing suffering, one undeniable truth has consistently endured: heaven rules. Daniel's incredible life story serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how bleak or dark the world may become, God's divine light never, ever fades. No matter how imposing or invincible a human kingdom may appear, it will eventually crumble. But God's eternal kingdom, that kingdom stands forever. He witnessed the exile, the triumphant return, the spectacular rise and devastating fall of empires, the coming of the Messiah, and a final, everlasting kingdom that will know no end. And now, we are left with a pressing question. Are we the generation Daniel spoke of? Have the seals indeed begun to open? Are we truly living in the epoch when knowledge exponentially increases and the earth seems to tremble with anticipation? If this message has resonated with you, if Daniel's profound story has sent chills down your spine, ignited hope, or sparked a hunger for deeper understanding, please don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that God still speaks, that ancient prophecies are unfolding before our very eyes. And in the comments section below, tell us what part of Daniel's timeless prophecy spoke most directly to your heart today. The scroll was sealed for thousands of years, but perhaps, just perhaps, it is being opened and revealed in your lifetime. Music plays softly,